fill our time with the answer to this question. Actually, after I finish my Quran translation, I ask myself an important question, and I think everybody should ask themselves the same question. What is the purpose of the Quran? What is Allah trying to tell us in the Quran at its essence? We know Allah is trying to teach us Tawheed, that He is uniquely singular. We know that Allah is trying to teach us a lot of things about this deen. But what is the essence? The thing that without it, we cannot do anything that the Quran is teaching us. Would anybody have an idea about what is the essence of the book?
Freedom.
Freedom is true. We must have discussed it, you and I, before, because you hit it right on the nail.
I thought it was a trick question, maybe.
Well, freedom is true because Allah is telling us in the book, I gave you a free will, and I'm going to hold you responsible for all the decisions you will be making. Without that freedom, you will not be responsible for anything you do. Only because I made you free that you will be responsible. So we need to think about this, give it a lot of thoughts, consider it, and then decide what do we do with this freedom, because we truly have freedom at this time. Not only we have freedom, Allah has Mashi'a. Mashi'a is a will to get things done, and He gave us Mashi'a. Although our Mashi'a is dependent on His, nothing will happen here unless He is willing for it to happen. But we can make decisions. We can make things happen. We can plan for something and get it done. That's another form of freedom, another expression of freedom, our Mashiach that we have, and we need truly to think about this. People go through life without giving it much thought. In our case right now, we're discussing it, and we need to think about what does being free mean to me? How can I take this freedom seriously, and what is it exactly that I can do with it? So, something I think it's worth thinking about. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad. Habbal. Unmute yourself, Muhammad, so we can hear you.
Alaikum salam rahmatullah. Sorry about that.
We're talking about the importance of the freedom that God gave us and the Mashiach that He gave us. And how seriously we should be taking it. And He called it Al-Amana, the trust. And Allah said that He had offered that same trust, same Amana, to the heavens, the earth, and the mountains. And they rejected it, and the human being accepted. He certainly was foolish. So just reading that ayah will tell me that freedom not only is a trust, but it's something that I need to be dealing with extremely seriously and showing a lot of thoughts to it, because I go through life deciding what to do with my time. Like right now, I decided to be with you. I could have been doing something else, for instance. So that decision has consequences. Each one of you decided to be here. Let's make it worthwhile. Anybody has any thoughts on this subject? Brother Firas, Brother Ayman, any thought about the importance of freedom? No thoughts.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Safi.
Wa alaikum assalam.
When you say freedom from, I just joined shortly a few minutes ago. From what context?
Well, actually, Allah called it Al-Amana. and said that we have offered this trust, this amana, to the heavens, the earth, the mountains, and they all rejected it. And I'm saying this amana is freedom. God gave us a free will to decide on what we want to do, to
Dr.
be
Safi,
here or to be away. Yes, Brother Firas.
so sorry to interrupt. Can you help me make the logical connection between al-amana and freedom?
Yes.
I mean, these are two distinct meanings. Maybe they are connected.
Yes. Two distinct words, and can mean many different things. Basically, well, let's talk linguistically. Al-amana is from amin, to start with, and the common translation for it is trust. When God give me something in trust that he gave to me but didn't give to anybody else of his creatures, I'll understand from siyaq, from the contents of the Quran altogether. That's the only thing we have that no other creature has, is this freedom to choose. So generally, scholars would taught that al-amana is our ability to choose freely, because that choice will make us responsible on the day of judgment for our deeds. Without being free, without having this freedom to choose, we can't be held responsible. So basically, this amana, see, the word freedom is a new word. The Quran doesn't have the word freedom to start with. It's a concept that we started using it later in history. Generally, the Quran talks about riq, which is one form. Riq is slavery. It's one form of a human existence that was common. And the Quran, in a sense, tried to free the slaves by legislating all kind of legislations that says if you swear to do something but didn't do it, free a slave. If you commit something and you didn't succeed on doing it, free a slave. So the only way we're talking about freedom versus slavery in the Quran is through freeing the slaves. But the act of being free to decide is a later understanding that humanity developed, and they called it freedom, hurriya. It's a new concept, but we're trying to apply it to old teachings. This way, we can make the Quran contemporary and relevant in the 21st century as it was in the 7th century. That's what I have to say. Brother Ayman, what do you have? You have a question?
Yes, it's related to the topic. Now, I would like to introduce the idea, maybe articulate it differently, and correct me if I'm wrong. If it's not within the same context that you're asking about, I think you're trying to describe the idea of free will. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so
to be specifically, yes. So when I said freedom, I meant free will.
Yes,
and
yes.
out of free will, other things will happen. But please go ahead and finish your idea.
Yes, free will has a lot of applications, and Allah gave us free will, and it gives you the ability to basically, without freedom, you don't have free will, and without free will, you really don't have any freedom.
Exactly.
So I think throughout the history of Muslims, free will, freedom was taken away. Those that wanted to make change, were persecuted. Their free will was taken away, their freedom. And because, I guess, of the systems that were established, people grew up not being able to, I guess, exercise free will. It was taken away by decrees or culture or orders from whoever was in charge.
Yes.
And they may not have felt it, or not felt it, but been able to put their finger on it or articulate it. To be honest with you, I look at our culture and the way children are brought up, and it feels like they are told, okay, this is the way it is, and this is how it's supposed to be.
Yes.
And they grow up this way, and automatically being stripped of their free will, their ability to think, their ability to affect change, because they're conditioned from an early age not to think outside the box,
Yes.
not to
Yes.
I guess, affect change, not to even listen to their heart.
Ayman, Dr.
Anyways.
Suhail joined us, and this is a good place probably to welcome him and to ask him to respond, because he's always talking to us about a better Muslim family. Without raising our children the proper way, we will be replaying the same bad play that is repeated for centuries now. People oppressing other people, preventing them from speaking freely or thinking freely. Therefore, we are stuck with the same belief without the ability to renew, renovate, and try to adopt making the Quran contemporary for all time. Dr. Suhail, the floor
Yes,
is yours, please.
Jazakallah khair. Yeah, I was really enjoying listening to the discussion. It's Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulullah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. I mean, this idea of trying to better understand our deen and life itself, and understand this world, is at the heart of our religion. At the heart of our religion is because there is no way we can fulfill the mission and achieve the purpose of Allah without understanding ourselves, without understanding our deen, without understanding life, without understanding this world. Because Islam is not a theory. It is implemented in a reality. And the understanding of the reality is as important as understanding the deen, because you cannot apply it without it. You cannot apply the Islam or understand it properly without that that understanding of life and reality. So Muslims should realize that as long you're living, you are just learning and acquiring better understanding and making adjustment. Freedom is at the heart of our religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created people free, did not impose on them even to believe in him. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make everybody believer. He did not impose his religion on people. That's by itself tells you that nobody has the right until the day of judgment to impose ideas or religion or beliefs on anybody. Because Allah did not do it, then nobody is in a position to do it. And what we take for granted here, believe me, there are number of Islamic groups or people acting in the name of Islam who do not believe in this. They believe that they have the right to judge people, and they have the right to convert people, and they have the right to force people to be Muslim or to punish them. and we have seen groups doing that. So even something as basic as this in our religion, a lot of people, they don't realize, they reject it. And by the way, even average Muslims, a lot of average Muslims, they think that nowadays we need to call for peace because we are weak. So a lot of average Muslims, they think that if we become strong, then maybe things will change. Maybe we're going to repeat the Ghazawat and also establish Khilafah and have. So it's really amazing how distorted the prevalent and the dominant understandings of Islam. They are so much distorted from reality. To the point that there used to be a debate among Muslims. I don't know, I'm sure it is still now, whether there is a freedom in Islam or not, even though Islam came to free people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the prophets, يَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ, in Surah Al-A'raf, that these prophets, they are meant to free people and relieve them from the shackles, things that are holding them back, those wrong superstitious ideas or thoughts or anything that holds a person back, hold them back. Religion came to free them so that their mind goes free, their imagination, their creativity. All of this was lost with the Salafi brand of Islam that basically reject all of this. Make all the art haram, does not recognize freedom. It makes religion in contradiction or confrontation with the nature of a human being. There are natural trends, natural tendency in a human being. Religion never came to suppress them. People love their country. Well, Islam did not say don't do it, like many Muslims say. They see contradiction between being religious and being patriot. There is no contradiction. They go hand in hand. Islam and peace, Islam and freedom, Islam and even justice does not take the central position that it should take in Islam, in the minds of many Muslims. So this is, I mean, it's very essential to emphasize this idea that people are born free. Allah reserved for himself exclusive right to hold them accountable, to judge them. None of us should even come close to that. That's not our job. We were not assigned that task, and we are not equipped to do it. And it's none of our business. It's not our job to impose a religion. It's not our job even to convert people. Our job is to be the best versions of ourselves and to maximize our contribution to the greater good. That's it. If you have only 10 seconds to define Islam, that's what the heart of Islam is. This is for individuals to be the best version of themselves and to maximize their positive impact and their contribution to the greater good. If you take this away from Islam, you're left with a religion that is very superficial, very dull, very rigid, unfortunately, and that's what's going on. Long way to go to do a true reform or revival. Not the one that happened in recent time when people, they went to the same brand of Islam and they just polished it. It's still a Salafi brand, but it became modern. So nowadays it is promoted by people who have no accent, people who speak different languages. It is, but the product is the same. It's only the packaging that has changed. It's still the same product that used to be promoted by traditional scholars it is being promoted by those young scholars or young activists today. It just the only thing that changed is the packaging and the marketing, but the product is unfortunately the same. That's not the revival or the reform that we're talking about. The reform is really to shake those foundations on which the Salafi understanding of Islam was built, and really to rediscover the original Islam with all its dimensions and the balance between those dimensions and the integration. It's a wonderful religion, very inspiring, very empowering, but it just had to be rediscovered.
Can I ask you a question,
Sure.
Dr. Saeb?
Sure.
What's wrong with Salafi? I mean, Salafi, that means Salaf. Salaf is known as Salaf Saleh, the good Salaf. If I
But-
want to follow the good Salaf, what's wrong with that?
Salaf meaning the sticking to the ways of the ancestors. What's wrong with it? Number of things that are wrong. This whole paradigm is built on few tenets or few elements or few foundations. Number one, and that's probably the most dangerous, is that we must limit ourselves to whatever work was done by our ancestors, which means automatically freeze your brain, freeze or cancel your brain. So that's very dangerous idea, because religion cannot remain relevant without intellectual creativity, because life is evolving and the text is fixed, and somebody comes and say, just stick to whatever work was done hundreds of years ago in a very different historical and socio-political context. That's very dangerous. Number two is they don't accept the distinction between verses that are foundational and verses that are contextual. So they don't understand that Quran came to do two things at the same time: to be a source of guidance for all times and all places, but also to solve the problem of the Arabian Peninsula at that time. So it had some verses that belong to the first category, they are principles, and there are some verses that fixed problems that exist at that time. Just open the Quran and go to the verses that talk about slaves and milk al-yamin, and then none of this exists now. That was contextual. That was the problem there, and this is how Islam dealt with it to solve it. So they don't distinguish that. Third, any hadith that is, any saying of the Prophet that is in the books of hadith is authentic, and also like the verses, it can be applied in any context. The idea of context is not there at all. They remove two things from Islam, or three, that makes Islam really very shallow and very rigid. One is the idea of maqasid, that this religion came to fulfill certain purposes. It's not like you apply it regardless of the consequences. No, you understand it in the light of the context. They eliminate the context and they eliminate the maqasid, the ultimate purposes of religion. So I take a verse and I apply it the same way here, or in Africa, or Asia, or in 2023, or in 1900, anytime. It's the same verse, you apply it the same way, regardless of the context. And then you apply it, you implement it, regardless whether it is foundational or not. 2. And 3, you implement it regardless of the consequences. It doesn't have to achieve any purpose. So you apply it, just apply it. So this rigid and literal understanding of Islam is, unfortunately, is the one that is so widespread among Muslims of course, if you add to that the idea that the Khilafah is a political system, the Islamic political system, and it has to be reinstated, that becomes even very more dangerous. So it's a package of idea, but again, where do they lead? Freezing the minds, creating a gap, a widening gap, an ever widening gap between religion and reality, making the religion irrelevant, and ensuring that Muslim will be stagnant and backward. Like you say, what you see now in the Muslim world is the product of that paradigm, that brand of Islam. You don't have to say that I'm a Salafi, but your ideas, if you subscribe to those ideas, you are, even if you don't realize it, even if you're not aware of it. So basically, they mutilated Islam by taking some essential element, blowing some small minor element out of proportion, so you ended up with something that is very distorted, very distorted. When you come and you take essential elements, either you marginalize them or you eliminate them, and you come to minor elements and you blow them out of proportion, you end up with something else. You end up with something that is very mutilated and very distorted. And that's what we have. And the results is what you see. The alternative is Islam is essentially a mission with ultimate purposes. Individuals prescribe to it, strive during their life to maximize their learning and their self-development to be the best versions of themselves and to maximize their contribution to the greater good. That's what make their creator pleased with them. The more improvement you do in your life, the more learning and improvement, the more contribution you do, that's how we make your creator pleased with you. So this is, and then the idea that we are not bound by any work that was done before or that was done elsewhere. Muslims, wherever they settle, they have to go to the text and extract from the text an understanding or a construct that is useful and relevant for them, and that will fulfill the purposes of Islam. It's like before the Prophet Muhammad, there used to be a messenger, special messenger sent to his people with a special message. Nowadays, we need special understanding in every different context. Yes, there will be Muslim American who is very different from Saudi Muslim, Pakistani Muslim, African Muslim, South American Muslim, whatever. Very different, meaning what? Are we going to pray 4 times or 6? No, we're going to pray 5 times. And we're going to fast in Ramadan. That's not how we're different. But how do we live Islam and how do we serve it? That depends on the context. You cannot tell me that the context is not important. Compare someone today who lives under occupation. Next, someone who lives under oppressive regime. Next, someone who living in United States that guarantees all kinds of freedom. You tell me that they're going to live and serve Islam the same way? Absolutely not. Context is critical. Is critical in determining the agenda, the priority, the methodology, everything. If Rasul ﷺ was sent in United States, there will be no hijrah, no migration. Why he would migrate? He would have stayed here. So the whole history of Islam would have changed. There will be no hijrah. Because Rasul ﷺ migrated when he was denied the freedom of conscience and the freedom of speech. That خلوا بيني وبين الناس, leave me alone. You don't want to take this religion, leave me alone. He was asking for the freedom of speech. And they denied him that. So he went to look for an alternative, look for another place. But if he was sent in, here at this time, he would not have migrated. And you would probably, and he would not have worn that imama. I mean, how come if he was sent in United States, are you gonna see Rasul Sallallahu with the jilbab and or qamis and the imama? No, he would wear exactly the same like people here.
That's a different Islam that you're talking about. I mean, if my father heard you right now, he probably would be very upset with you. But
I know.
so
It's not.
next thing you're gonna tell me that we have to be nice to our Christian and Jewish neighbors?
Absolutely. And
What?
we are members of one. Quran says, not me. No, we are members of one family. Every human being, if with the proper understanding of Islam, which we are promoting, and inshallah will continue to promote, as long we're living, is when you see someone in the street, the first thing that comes to your mind, this is a person who is your brother or sister in large family called humanity. And he or she is a person who is dignified. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Number 3, he is or she is your fellow citizen. You have that thing in common. Like the Prophet said, as if you are on board of a ship. So this is someone who's traveling with you. The ship here is the society or the nation in which you're living. Fellow citizen. And then you see that person as your neighbor or your colleague. Look at all the commonalities. Now, what is religion? Religion is something between you and your creator and between them and their creator. So it is basically you represent Islam in the best possible way. When you have a chance, you articulate it in the best possible way, whether people choose to accept it or reject it. That should not affect your relationship with them. All other commonalities and the possible and cooperating, working for the common good, that should not be affected. Because that decision, Allah told the Prophet that your job ends at delivering the message exclusively. إِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغِ. If you represented Islam in the best possible way, and when you had the chance, you articulated in the best possible way, your job is done. That's it.
But didn't Allah say, Inna ad-deena 'inda Allah al-Islam? That means you're telling me we have to accept our Christian neighbors and Jewish neighbors?
Yeah, عند Allah, not عندنا. إن الدين عند الله الإسلام. Which religion Allah will accept, how Allah is going to hold people accountable, that's none of our business. We should not even get there.
Why? Do we have a monopoly on Islam? Didn't
don't.
Allah create Adam and taught him Islam? And taught Nuh Islam? And taught Moses Islam? And why are we monopolizing the religion of Islam and calling ourselves only Muslims? Isn't everybody who recognize that there is a creator and day of judgment, according to the Quran, defined as a Muslim?
Oh, well, I go even further than that. And I really don't, it's none of my business to even to classify people in category. Never mind to tell you that who is in good term with Allah and whom Allah will accept or I don't care. It's none of my business. Something that Allah said, it's not your job. And the ironic thing is a lot of Muslims, they abandoned the job that was assigned to them. And they busied themselves with a job that Allah told them it's not yours. To classify people, who is a Muslim, who is not, who is a believer, who is not, who's going to go to heaven, who is not, etc. That's not our job. It's not even your job to convert. This conversion is not your job. Your job is to Do your best with action and with good words. ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة. To make sure that the people around you, they got the message. They got it the same way you got it. They got the message. They understand Islam properly. You bring them to the point to make a conscious decision. That's your job. They have misconception about Islam. They associate it with terrorism, whatever. Your job is to fix that. Fix it not with words, with deeds, more. If you do that, then your job ends. Your job, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, used very specific words, which is to be witness, not judge. كونوا شهداء لله. The witness, the job of the witness is not to make decision. The job of the witness is to share what they know, and the judge will make the decision. Allah calls us and asks us to be witnesses, not judges. You take the witness stand, you say what you know and what you saw. You deal with people in this life, you tell them about religion, about the creator, etc., and that's it. It's like the witness. After you do that, you leave, and then judge will decide.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Suhail.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So I have a question on that. Like, so what is my identity as a Muslim? Why should I choose Islam? Or why is it important that I'm a Muslim and not maybe following other path if we are all the same?
It's not all the same. I didn't say we are all the same or who is better, who is not. I said leave that for Allah. All what I'm saying is, if you accepted the message of Islam, you implement it to the best of your ability, you promote it whenever you have chance, but don't worry or don't waste any minute thinking about who's better, who's not, who's a Muslim, who's not, who is going to be accepted, who's not, how Allah is going to judge people, because that's waste of time. And it can even be whisper from Shaitan because it's a distraction. Shaitan is distracting you. So mind your business. You chose Islam, should be proud of it. Spend your life doing your best to understand it to the best of your ability, because that requires work. To implement it to the best of your ability, and then to show Islam in action, in your behavior, to be a role model to people, to be mercy to the people around you, and then when you have a chance, to be prepared to tell people about your religion. Whether they choose it or not, they remain your cousins, they remain your fellow human, your fellow citizens, and then if you have something in common, you continue. You are parents of some child who goes to school, and they are parents of child who goes to the same school. Then that's still commonality. There is something in common. You live in the same neighborhood. So focus on commonalities, and then for religion, focus on yourself, focus on what can you do fi sabilillah, and do your best to promote Islam in the best possible way, by example first. By example, and but by what you do. But what you do to serve the common good. For people, what do they decide? You should not even worry about that. So I'm not saying that it's not important to be Muslim, or there is no difference, or you can choose a religion by a random choice. No, I never said that. I'm saying you came to understand this religion. You thought, you believed that it is the right one. It is the best way to worship Allah. It has the best concept of God. Then stick to it. Stick to it proudly. Worship Allah to express your love and your gratitude to Him, and dedicate your life to Allah, which means dedicate your life to the service of humanity, because Allah needs nothing from us. If someone wants to dedicate their lives to Allah, Allah wants you to go and serve people. Serve people, serve them with your knowledge, serve them with your time, with your money, with your advice, with your expertise, in a very compassionate way. And you serve regardless. Not you serve only those who accept religion, or you serve only Muslim. You serve humanity. You serve a human being in pursuit of Ridwanullah, to make Allah pleased with you. Not you serve them so that they convert to Islam. And we should never mix these two. We should not make Islam cheap like that. No, you serve because this is our duty to serve humanity, and to the betterment of humanity is the essence of the mission of Islam. But this idea of sitting down and classifying people and which religion is going to be accepted and which one is not, number one, is wrong, because we're doing a job that Allah has reserved for Himself exclusively. Number two, is very dangerous, because all of this terrorism that you see done in the name of Islam or in the name of other religion, by the way, it's in all religions. All the terrorism, its origin is this idea of judgmental attitude, is to start classifying people. That's the roots of it, because it starts there. It starts that we are Muslims, we are believers, and the other are non-believers. So divide the world in two parts. And then the issue is put on the table. What should we do with non-believers? You see the deviation? It's getting worse and worse. So we start by classification and judgmental attitude. And then what we should do with non-believers? And then somebody will say we need to convert them, and somebody else will say we need to kill them. And after that fatwa is issued, a young man or young person will take that and implement it. It's a chain reaction that has its roots in that judgmental attitude. And it starts between Muslims and non-Muslim, and then even among Muslims. Who are the good Muslims? No, these are bad Muslims. There is only one group. There is only one Jama'at. The others are, their Islam is questionable. And then the question again, what should we do with them? And then the fatwa comes, and then somebody will execute it. That's why we have seen Muslims killing Muslims. And by the way, it's happening with other religions too. It's this judgmental attitude and the feeling that you are the only one who is a believer, and the only one who is good, and everybody else is bad, and everybody else is going to hellfire. That's very dangerous. It's wrong, and it's very dangerous. So you accepted Islam, spend your life to try to better understand it and better implement it and better promote it. Don't busy yourself with what other people decide and do, because none of us guarantees anything. I mean, those who, by the way, get engaged in judgmental attitude, implicitly, they are saying as if they are guaranteeing heaven, to the point that I guarantee it for myself, and now I can judge others. While Islam tells you exactly the opposite. Busy with yourself, never take anything for granted. وَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Never think that you are already there. Always keep pushing your limits, and don't worry about others. So you can see we really reversed, turned upside down, a religion that tells you focus on yourself to be better, to learn more, and never think that you are there. And don't worry about others. That's the Islam that we understand. The Islam that is promoted by some people and accepted by many is the other way around. We are Muslims, we are there, already خير أمة. I don't need to learn more. I don't need to push my limits. I'm doing fine. So now I can afford the luxury to judge others.
To confirm what you're saying, Dr. Suhail, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet himself, لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ هُدَاهُمْ.
أبدا.
It's not up to you. It's not, I'm not giving you the job to give them guidance,
To convert them, yeah.
to convert them.
لا تهدي من أحببت.
إن الله يهدي من يشاء.
أفأنت تكره الناس حتى يكونوا مؤمنين.
All this we need to remember,
yeah.
when we start thinking about people playing judges.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Hujurat says, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. Your people, we created you from pair of male and female and made you into nations and tribes so that you get to know each other. And then when it comes to the judgment, إن أكرمكم عند الله, that the best amongst you is the one who is the more pious. And piety, we have no way to judge it for ourselves, not for you. I cannot judge my own. I cannot tell you that I am 70% pious or 80 or 60. How about judging you? I have no idea about I don't have access to your heart. I don't have access to your intention. I don't have access to your thoughts. I don't know that everything that you do. So how can I judge? That's why Allah said, Inna akramakum, the best amongst you in the sight of Allah is the more pious. So, clear. First of all, it is in the sight of Allah, not you. And second, he associated that he made the criterion something that he is the only one who can judge, which is taqwa. Allah is the only one who can judge the piety of people. I mean, if on the day of judgment, when you are given your book of deeds, you will be shocked. I mean, imagine how much we do every day, and all of that is recorded. People are shocked with their own book of deeds. Never mind to be aware of somebody else to the point that you can judge them. There is no way. So it's not our job, and we are not equipped to do it. As far as I know, until now, they did not invent a taqwa meter. They invented many meters for many things. Yeah, I mean, there are so many things that we can measure in this life, but as far as I know, they did not invent something that you put here and then it tells you this person is 60% taqwa or 70%. It's not there. So we should just steer away from it.
Dr. Suhail, we're almost an hour now. Can we summarize? Do you want to stay longer than an hour?
I can. Today I can, yeah, inshallah.
Okay,
I
go
have
ahead.
another question. I have two questions. One is, what is our role, like, in terms of following the righteous people as role model? My understanding is that you're saying the concept of Salafi can a lot of time deviate us maybe from the true path and bring that mentality of, extreme. So like, what role do we have in terms of following our righteous predecessors, and how maybe we can look up to them and try to also exemplify ourselves? And the other question is in terms of building our confidence, especially in these times of all these tragedies that's taking place in Palestine, and we keep questioning ourselves, our iman, and and especially maybe for the young people who see it like how comes like this is going for too long, and as Muslims we feel hopeless, and we are always in trial, we are always so like how do we uplift our iman in these issues? Thank you.
Hey, the first question is, and when I say salaf, don't get me wrong, I didn't say, I mean, we commend the work that they have done, and there are so many tabi'een. In every generation, there are so many people who did wonderful job, they were great people, etc. All what I'm saying is that not to elevate their work to become sacred, to become like Quran. That's all what I'm saying. It's still work that was done in a certain context. And therefore, we should never, because nowadays the Salafi methodology tells you to freeze your mind and go and memorize their work. Memorize the work of Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, etc. Memorize. But you should not use this. And they have a reason for that. They have an evidence say that because every generation, every new generation is worse, they refer to a hadith that every generation is worse than the previous one, and therefore the Salaf are the best and the closest to the Prophet. So we don't need to bother because we are corrupt people and they are pure. So let's stick to what they said. That's very dangerous because Islam, as I said, it remain relevant only with continuous ijtihad. If you limit yourself to work that was done centuries ago, you make yourself irrelevant. So that's what I'm saying is they did work for their time to address the problems of their time and to apply Islam in their time. That work is a human effort, some successes, some failure. We need to do the same work, not to rely on their work. We need to, the alternative for us or our duty is to study the Quran and implement it in our context, and to study the personality of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his life, Sunnah, and implement it in our context. That's the job that we should do, which runs completely against the Salafi idea that says you should not do that because it was done already. It was done already, and that's enough for us. So that's the most dangerous part. I mean, take the Prophet as a role model. Study the Prophet and take the Prophet as a role model. The work of the Salaf is a work that has to be taken with a grain of salt, filtering, selective, and not as the textbook. You know, when you take a class, there is a required textbook and there is a recommended reading. The only required textbook is the Quran and the authentic Sunnah that is consistent with the Quran. That's the textbook. That's you need to study. Everything else is extra reading. Everything else is extra reading, not the textbook. So, but because Muslims became lazy, they went the easy way. Rather than bothering ourselves with hard work, intellectual work, and ijtihad, and it's risky, let's stick to the work of our ancestors and say these are the Salaf Salih, and therefore we don't know better than them. They know better, and we need to stick to that. If you want to take a role model, it's a very good idea to take a mentor, someone to mentor you, but it's still mentorship in Islam. It does not mean taking anything for granted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet taught his companions not to take anything for granted, even from him. Even when he was talking to them, they will ask him, is this a revelation or this is your opinion? And if he says that's my opinion, they say we have a different opinion. That's how he trained his people. I don't know where we get this idea from, that this is my sheikh or this is my scholar. Whatever he says, I'm going to accept it. You should not. It can become even form of worship, by the way, form of shirk. because Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam one time was explaining the verse in Surah Al-Ma'idah, and that Jews and Christians, before, some of them, they took their rabbis and priests as their, they worship. And one of the Muslim at that time was the Christian before. He said, "Oh, Prophet of Allah, we never worship them." And the Prophet explained worshiping meaning following blindly.
Mhm.
If you follow somebody blindly, you're worshiping them.
Mhm.
So we need to raise a generation of Muslims that even if they are in the presence of the greatest scholar, they still ask questions, and they still have, very politely, very respectfully, but they ask questions, and they have that critical thinking. When they read something or they listen to a lecture, they don't take anything, they don't take everything for granted. That's the result of this freezing the minds. We need that critical thinking. We need that independent thinking and creative. For the challenges of our time, I mentioned that in this last khutbah. I said, talk to your children, because there is a lot of pain and anger going on among Muslims all over the world, but it is critical to channel that anger and pain in a constructive way and make sure that nothing crazy or stupid is done. Nothing that causes harm and does not cause anything good, and it is haram. So it's not, ends don't justify the means in Islam. If you are angry, you have the right to be angry. You have a right to feel the pain of the people of Gaza. But how you channel that, you channel them in constructive way. And I mentioned that for young generation, talk to them that this is happening because of our weakness. And if you want to do something, go try to excel in your field. That's strength. Try to excel in your field. Try to be very successful in this life so that you increase your influence and your impact. Try to have a strong network of people so that you expand your circle of influence. Try to be civically engaged consistently. That's the only way. That energy has to be channeled this way. And then you can see you can compare someone who is very successful, physician, lawyer, business person, whatever, very successful, very well to do financially, very well connected, civically engaged, have a relationship with public officials, etc. How much this person can do for the people of Gaza, for example, today, compare it to someone who is struggling in life and weak and maybe need help. That's the difference. So you don't like what you see, Allah will not change your situation until you change. So try to excel in your field, try to be a strong believer. Allah loves strong believer more than weak believers. And strength in our time comes through knowledge, science, resources, connection. That's how you become strong. It's not physical strength. It's very important for our children to realize that in the short term, try to participate in any activity that educates the public about what's going on and educate your public officials. Any pressure that you can put on public officials to change policies, go for it. In the long run, work on yourself to be successful and to increase your influence and expand your circle of influence. I know, for example, for Syria, for example, nowadays, there are some Syrian doctors who take a month or two, sometimes a year, to go and volunteer to treat Syrian refugees in Lebanon, for example. If they didn't have that skills, they cannot do that. And there are people who can donate a lot of money. There are people who can write a check of 100,000 and doesn't hurt them. So you can see how much a person can do if they work on themselves and they try to be successful. And for those who are like losers, they go either they limit themselves to complaining and feeling the pain and venting out their anger in empty talks, or they go and do something crazy thinking that they are serving the cause.
Assalamu alaikum. May I inject something? This is very helpful. I want to say something very important. You mentioned something about the role model and how Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam should be our main role model.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no disagreement with that at all, except that I want to inject something here. We as Muslims, if we read the Quran with with the intention of understanding and taking lessons from the Quran, we need to be critical of everything we read and take it with certain mentality of, is this true or not? The only fixed thing we have is the Quran itself, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to preserve it and keep it pure. Personally, I am convinced that at least hadith should be taken with care, should be taken with critical thinking, we should look for the authentic one. When you say authentic, means that we have to take a reasonable amount of effort to make sure it makes sense, it is properly supported, it is in agreement with the Quran, agreement with common sense, and some of the hadiths basically we have to be careful. I want to say the same thing about as-sirah, Sirah Nabawiyah. Now, as far as I understand, the life of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we just mentioned that we should read about his life and take lessons from his life. As-Sirah Nabawiyah itself, as far as I'm concerned, is in the same position as hadith, meaning, correct me if I'm wrong, As-Sirah Nabawiyah, the most popular book of As-Sirah Nabawiyah is Sirat Ibn Hisham. It is widely agreed among Muslims that this is the main one that everyone else took from. And I understand also from the introduction of As-Sirah of Ibn Hisham that Ibn Hisham himself did not write it from zero. He took it from someone called Abu Ishaq. Abu Ishaq is a figure that we don't have authentic anything from him except what Ibn Hisham took from him. As-Sirah Nabawiyah, as per Ibn Hisham and Abu Ishaq, is a best effort of collecting all the folk stories that existed at the time. We're talking 200 years after the death of Sayyidina Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They put it together and they said, we don't know what's right, what's wrong. This is our best effort, and here's As-Sirah. I'm saying that simply because there are certain stories narrated according to this source, main source, that says this and that happened to Rasulullah at that point. Nowadays, I'm listening to discussions to say, is this historical event true? Is it really according to the actual spirit of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, of mercy, of following the Quran, of certain things have to be taken critically. I'm saying all of this because I want us to teach our children to have critical thinking as well. The only constant we have in this great religion is the Quran, and everything else is supportive and needs to be taken with critical thinking. Critical thinking, I will underline 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because if we don't teach ourselves and our children to be critical and to question and say, is this correct? How can you prove to me it is correct? Then we don't have a starting point to improve as a culture, as a nation, as a tradition. Do you agree with what I'm saying, Dr. Anushi?
I can take it even further than that. Let's talk about the three things that you mentioned: the Sirah, the Hadith, and the Quran.
Yes.
Let's start with the weakest. The weakest is the books of Sirah. The books of Sirah, they were done in no scientific way whatsoever.
True.
So there was no scrutiny. And Ibn Hisham himself said he collected almost everything he has heard. So that's why you can see sometimes there is a disagreement about even an incident, whether it happened or not, and what year. Somebody said it happened in the second year, somebody said 6th year of Hijrah, etc. So the Sirah, book of Sirah, is the weakest when it comes to authenticity. And we, even things that are authentic, something that has Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has done, it does not mean that you go and do it today. He did it because in a certain context, he saw that's the best way to act. So there is a context. So our job is to understand the personality and the life of the Prophet ﷺ deep enough so that we can imagine and figure out what he would do if he was sent now at our time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's what I call simulation, not duplication. You want to simulate, not duplicate. I mean, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam lived Islam and promoted in his context. Again, I'm not talking about the prayers and fasting. These do not change. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how you build your community, how you lead it, how you live Islam, how you interact with people. There was a context, right? So even authentic, they have also to be taken in their context. That's hadith. We need to be, of course, the work of Bukhari and Muslim, the Sahih, the Bukhari especially, followed by Muslim, is that great efforts were put there. There was scrutiny. And the proof is 600,000 saying he came up with only 4,000. So there was scrutiny. That's different than Sirah, collecting what stories that you had. No, this is somebody who did their diligent work to scrutinize. But it is still a human effort. Cannot be 100%. One of the greatest, one of the worst mistakes that happened in history of Islam, and it's not by Bukhari or Muslim. Usually the problems do not happen with the scholars. It happens with the followers. Is someone comes after that. By the way, at the time of Bukhari, there are some scholars of Islam who rejected some of his hadith. And nobody thought it's kufr or it's something weird. There are people who are living at that time and they said this hadith by Bukhari is not authentic. Is not so, and people accepted that. So it's a human effort. The mistake that I mentioned is when you have a follower or some followers came after that and they said that every hadith of Bukhari is authentic, and implicitly or explicitly saying even if it contradicts a verse in Quran, we have to find another interpretation of that verse to make it consistent with the hadith. That's very dangerous. Very dangerous. And that's those who did Sharh al-Bukhari, the explanation of the Bukhari, are the ones who subscribe to this idea that every hadith in Bukhari is authentic, regardless, even if it contradicts the principle of Islam, even if it contradicts a clear-cut verse, Quran. So we need to add this dimension, the idea of the context and the idea that the hadith of Bukhari maybe 90%, maybe 95%, but Muslims should not be afraid to say it is not 100%, because in some circles this is considered kufr today. If you say that the work of Bukhari is not perfect, it's 100%, it's not 100%. Some people, they consider this as if you're out of your mind. No, we need to check the hadith against the principles of Islam. If I find a hadith that tells me, obey your ruler, even if they beat you, torture you, steal your money, I'm not going to accept it. I'm sorry. You tell me it is in Bukhari, it is in Muslim, I'm not going to accept it. Because the Prophet would never do that, would never say something against the Quran that tells you to accept injustice, dhulm, torture, beating you, stealing your money, corrupt ruler, oppressive ruler, and you have to obey them. There is no way the Prophet would have said that. And or umirtu an uqatil an-nas hatta yuslimu, this runs against the principle of Islam. That the Prophet said that I was instructed to fight people until they become Muslim. Many to impose Islam on them. I have a verse that says, La ikrah fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. So we need to do that work of, first of all, authenticity. Scrutinize the hadith, whether it is consistent with the principles of Islam or not. And second, the context. It might be very authentic hadith, but does not apply in our context. What's the problem? There is nothing wrong with this. You tell me, what do I need to do with this hadith? I can tell you that it can be applicable in a different context, in a different place or a different time. It's just not applicable here. So that's for the hadith. Now for the Quran, of course, Quran, there is no question about authenticity. But the Quran, it consists of two types of verses. Foundational verses that are timeless. Contextual verses that can apply only in a similar context. And without this distinction, we are not doing Islam a favor, religion. Without this distinction that Quran was doing two jobs or for achieving two objectives at the same time. Guidance for us who were not there, and guide us till the day of judgment. That's where you have those foundational verses. And then answering the people's questions, the people of Arabian Peninsula, and solve their problems. And Quran could not do one or the other. It has to do both. Imagine Quran talks only about the problems of the Arabian Peninsula at that time. Then it will be like the books that was sent before, which is relevant only for special time and special group. And imagine, on the other hand, that Quran only has those timeless principles, but did not answer the questions and the problems that the people were facing at that time. How can they help them? How can Quran help them? Because they have pressing issues. There was something called slavery at that time, women abuse, etc. And Quran came to fix that, to fix those problems. So, and Allah promised to preserve the text and assign us the task to contextualize it, to keep it relevant. And that's a task that we have not been doing for so long, because we chose the easy way. Let's go to the book, to the work that was done centuries ago and translated to English, and try to teach young Muslim Americans in this country on the books of Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn Kathir or Ibn Qayyim, etc. It talks about issues that are not here anymore, and they don't address the issues that our children are facing every day. So we are making our own religion irrelevant with this, just because we are lazy and because we are scared of ijtihad. Maybe if we do ijtihad, we will make a mistake. Yeah, Sidi, you make mistake is better. With doing ijtihad is better than freezing your mind to guarantee that you'll be irrelevant.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Aizul Hassan. I want to have two questions, or maybe two aspects of the same question. You mentioned about contextual and also simulation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna bring this topic. Can you explain it to me? How should I react to my kids? Because they're way too open-minded in my mind, but I could be wrong about LGBT and same-sex marriage.
That's the question?
Yes,
Okay.
they're way too open-minded, but I'm not. But how should I react to them?
How old are they?
Oh, they're grown up now, but they're like in 20s. But
And
they
I
were like that
mentioned-
even when they were in high school. They were like that,
I mentioned this before. I'm gonna repeat, inshallah. We are blowing this issue out of proportion. We are making it bigger than it is. It doesn't deserve all our attention. What we need is to focus on raising our children, educate them about religion, direct about their mission in life, direct them to excel in life, direct them to have very high aspiration, etc. Now, tell them, educate them that this country happens to be a very diverse society. it's probably the most diverse society in the world. It has all religions, all ethnicity, everything. Just name it and it is here. There are worship places for everything in this country. There are communities, so they have to realize that this is the nature. That's not an Islamic society or Islamic country or anything. That's very diverse. And it was designed from day one to be secular. That religion is for people to keep it for themselves, not to bring it to school or etc. So basically, our children, they have to realize, like what we do as adults, that in the workplace, you may be sitting in a meeting and the one next to you is Hindu, the other is Christian, the other is from this ethnicity, from that ethnicity, and the other is LGBT. That's none of your business. I mean, your relationship with them is a relationship of work. As a colleague, yeah, you work. Number one, that's the right thing to do. And number two, the law does not allow more than that. So you may have a student LGBT, you may have a teacher, you may have a colleague. Now, for our children, they have to understand that there will be in the class someone like that. That's not something you choose. Now, what you choose is your friends. And when you choose a friend, you need to choose someone with whom you have things in common. The more commonality. I mean, even if you don't have the same religion, but at least you have some commonality in terms of set of values. That's a relationship by choice. And you need to teach our children that when it comes to choosing a friend, you choose, you need to know how to choose, but you don't choose your classmates, and you don't need to worry about that. The relationship is a relationship of taking classes together, and then it ends there. So I'm afraid that it's like to any reaction. If we push to one extreme, I'm afraid the reaction of our children to go to the other extreme. If we make this issue too big and bigger than necessary, we may create more problems. And that happens throughout our history. Anytime you push the pendulum to one extreme, the reaction goes to the other extreme. We have seen it in the strict separation of gender, brothers and sisters in mosques. Very, very artificial, because they live in societies that is mixed. So rather than having a healthy environment with supervision and with mentors and with teachers, etc., no, we go for strict separation, and we teach them to be hypocrite, because they go for strict separation in the mosque, and then the moment they go out, society it doesn't work like that. That's basically, issues need to be kept in context, should not be blown out of proportion, and that's freedom. And we live in a country that is free, and we want to keep that freedom. And we should never join the ranks of anybody who will restrict that freedom, because if you do that, first of all, that's wrong Islamically, to push against freedom. But also, even pragmatically, if you push against the freedom of any group today, you may be the next victim. You may be the next victim, and we should leave it there. These people, they worked very hard. It's very unfortunate that we're paying the price for their hard work. They worked hard for decades to bring it to this point. So we only need to blame ourselves. Now, when it comes to policies, that's a different story. We have the right to stand against same-sex marriage and to keep the definition to protect the family. That's a political stand that we have the right, and we need to advocate it and join hands with others who share the same thing with us. That's different. We're not saying that these don't have the right to exist, or what should we do with them. We're saying that our position on this issue is to preserve the family, and we are against this kind of the change of policy. That's our right, and nobody can deny that to us.
Jazakallah khairan.
Yeah, so the need to distinguish between relationship that is not by choice, classmates, colleagues, co-workers, and the relationship by choice, that's friends, that's different. So I have some questions here. But you do also call way too open-minded as well. If no one is trying to get you to be gay or anything you do not wish to be or believe, then don't live and let live. Yeah, God has made us different and we accept those around us as they are. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. I mean, it's none of our business. I mean, we need anytime there is a room in the public sphere to take a position and advocate it, we should do that. But we shouldn't go. I mean, this idea of thinking about this phenomena, should we tolerate it or not? And these people, they had their right to exist or not? That we should not even get there. I mean, this country is designed different than the, I mean, countries from which many of us came. Yeah. This country has this division, clear division, that a relationship at work does not involve religion or politics or sex or anything. It's a work relationship. And I mean, everything is neighbor. It's a relationship of neighborhood, neighbors. That's it. In many collective culture, these things are, I mean, they overlap. Not in this country. That's why you may work with someone for 10 years or 20 years. You never know whether they're Republican or Democrat, or you never know their religion, because that's not an issue. This is the way this country is designed, is that there are different hats and different roles, and there are boundaries. A relationship between co-workers and colleagues, it's a relationship of work. It does not involve anything else. You don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about anything else. And then in every place or every context, there is some sort of relationship, and you need to wear that hat. I don't know why Muslims are having this phobia of the LGBT, or making it bigger issue than it is. There are drugs in high schools, same. There are all kinds of problems. There are people who are drinking. There are all kinds of issues in the society. So what we're gonna do? We will need to raise our children to inoculate them, like you inoculate them physically against any diseases. You inoculate them morally against any what you see as social diseases. But don't think about that you're going to have a chance to control the society or make it, design it the way you like. So solution, it's not isolation. It's not scaring people, our children. It just inoculate them, raise them, educate them, so that they can be exposed to these things, and you will not worry about it, and you will not be afraid.
Jazakallah, kul khair, Dr.
وإياكم إن
Suhail.
شاء الله.
And we see you next time, inshallah.
إن شاء الله. جزاك الله خير.
Assalamu alaikum.
السلام ورحمة الله.